This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where it's all about getting the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Brought to you by Itamar Shafir, founder and CEO of Umbrella, the technology platform and brand that is powering thousands of marketing agencies around the country. Find him at umbrellaus.com. Now, here's your host, Kevin Pruitt.
This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we talk with successful marketing experts about ways to build and grow their digital marketing agency. My special guest today teaches digital marketing to the world's biggest brands and at the most recognized universities. He travels around the world, teaching a wide variety of digital marketing topics to teams within the world's most iconic brands, including Google, Experian, Microsoft, Disney, Nationwide, Orange, HP, Proctor Gamble, and IBM, among others. According to Microsoft, he has an uncanny ability to simplify the complexity of digital marketing into concepts that are understandable, relatable, and ultimately doable. His training curriculum is used at universities across the country, from developing real estate websites in 1996 to starting his own digital marketing agency. He has been at the forefront of entrepreneurship and digital marketing. In 2015, he pivoted from his agency business to focus full-time on training and now offers coaching digital marketing courses at learnsitelogic.com. He's also a digital communications instructor and educational consultant for the New Media Academy in Dubai, as well as a digital marketing instructor for the ANA, the Association of National Advertisers. He's also an instructor for LinkedIn Learning. Don't know when he has time to do all these things, but he's an amazing guy. He's the author of 3 books, Internet Marketing, An Hour a Day, Wired to be Wowed, and Teach New Dogs Old Tricks. When he isn't immersed in the universe of marketing and technology, he spends most of his time being a husband and a dad to 4 girls. And on top of everything else, he does beekeeping. Whatever time is left is spent reading history, culture, or philosophy books. He's a self-proclaimed copy snob, absolutely loves a good cup of joe, especially while reading. His overall goal is to teach businesses how to make marketing logical, measurable, and predictable under the guise of being plannable so they can be profitable. Join me in welcoming a great guest today, Matt Bailey. Matt, welcome to the Marketing Umbrella Podcast.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, I mean, there were quite a few things that I listed. Is there anything that we didn't leave out? You pick up a hobby on the side with all your spare time?
Well, the way my wife explains it, my hobby is what became my industry. Building websites back in the 90s, that was my hobby. And now that I've kind of built it into this, it's the quest for another hobby. But obviously it can't be a hobby that takes too much time.
Well, it's that's an amazing background. And it's interesting how many things you do. You hear so many people talk about, oh, you got to niche down. You got to say no. You got to say no all the time. It sounds like to me, you say yes a lot.
I was thinking about that the other day, but yes, that's very true. I part of it is you just never know where it's going to take you. So that is something. Now, I do say no. I've had to work on that. And I think part of that with the agency world, you do learn eventually to say no.
For sure.
But when it comes to education, there's a lot of opportunities, and I listen to almost anything that anyone's going to pitch, because you just never know where it's going to lead you or what the potential is. I've had to become more selective over the past couple of years, through the pandemic especially, because all of a sudden the demand for virtual training just went through the roof. And there's only a limited number of hours in the day you can do that. There's only so much energy you have to engage an audience through a camera. So that put a lot of, things in perspective, trying to figure out, now, what am I going to do with this time and how am I going to grow the business from there?
Well, I think obviously you become a master at leveraging, time and resources. I mean, because no one could have done this laundry list of things unless you say, how can we kind of like kill 2 birds with 1 stone here? How can we use this resource over in this space as well? And especially if we're kind of operating in the same stream, as you're trying to. So before we get started, I'm just curious. So how did the transition from the marketing space to the education space happen?
Well, even though I had my agency, and even before I started my agency, I was working for other companies, I was still being asked to present and teach. And I was leading short little workshops. I was presenting at local like chamber events, talking to businesses. Just, I wasn't selling anything. I was just presenting. I wanted people to know this is available to you. It's free. It's easy. Get in the search engines. And even prior to that, I've just always enjoyed being, it's easy for me to communicate to people. So I've done sales and marketing, and it just really kind of kept growing into this area of teaching. And so when I had my agency, I was still speaking at conferences, still doing training seminars, and it got to the point where I've got to decide which way I'm going to go. It's I can't do both any further. And I realized that even though I had the agency, one of the things that made us unique is I'm training our clients.
Right.
I'm training my employees. And our best clients were the clients that we spent a couple of days with them, just training them as to here's what we're doing. Here's what it's going to look like. And here's the expectations. And here's how we're going to measure. And so the ones that we spent the most time with training became our best clients. And I loved that part of it. I love that training and education part. So making that transition was actually very easy to do. Fortunately, I didn't have to wait long before I started getting some calls and requests for training. And most of my engagements are multi-year engagements with clients. So, if they have multiple locations around the world,
Right.
or we are developing an internal education system. So we're developing training videos, training content for their own learning system. And I think probably it was about a year before the pandemic, I decided, I need some educational structure myself. So I went back and got my master's degree in education and instructional design. That was amazing. I would do it again in a moment because it taught me the structure of education. I knew the content, I knew what I was trying to teach,
Right.
and this just put it to another
Here's
level.
how you do scope and sequence. Here's how
Right.
the whole like formula of doing it. I think it's quite a testimonial though to you that you have extended engagements. That it's not just, oh, come do the course. Oops, well, here, thanks. Here, we'll pay you. Right, here's the check. We'll call you if we need you again, type thing. So that's an investment of their part, but I think it also is kind of indicative of you investing in your clients. When you had your agency, and that's a great kind of segue into just Site Logic. What is it? What does it do? What's its USP?
Wow. Site logic, it's logical. That's what it all comes from.
Hence the
Um,
name.
yeah, I'm a big fan of philosophy and especially Aristotle. In when I was in university, I had to read Aristotle's Rhetoric, and it's one of the only books I kept from my college years because as I'm reading it, I'm like, this is sales, this is marketing, and they're the principles in there. It's funny, it's over 2003, 2,500 years old. And the principles have not changed because you're talking about people and persuading people. And what he says is that people are ultimately persuaded trying to find their own happiness. And if you can make them happy, they'll follow you. And so that has stuck with me. So that's where Site Logic, it's a combination of website and logic coming together, that we're persuading people. And to me, this whole digital communication, digital marketing, this whole digital media industry, it's all very logical. It's not difficult. It's a lot of work. And so it's number one, there are foundations to what you do. And if you don't have those foundations, then yeah, things are going to be shaky. But once you have those foundations, now you build, now you go into a niche, now you develop these things. But there has to be a foundational level of skills, of competencies that you build on from there. And it's the same thing if you're going to, build a website. You have to have a good foundation, and then you develop into the bleeding edge technology. Same thing
Right.
with social. It all works together.
So you're more talking about, it sounds like that you're more talking about functionality or the systemic um, foundations of the site versus logic versus emotion,
Yep.
or the whole idea of, you hear everybody say, hey, you've got to tell a good story. Marketing is just telling a good story.
Hmm.
And the whole idea, but it almost sounds like that you said, no, actually that's not, you have to appeal to, the left brain people out there as well, type thing. So I'm curious the distinction between those two things.
Well, persuasion comes in three elements, and you nailed the two there. So logic is the first element of persuasion. Emotion is the second element of persuasion, and you can't have all one or the other. There has to be both in there. That I need to satisfy the logical side by giving you information that you can validate, something that proves what I'm saying is true. But we also need that emotion, because that emotion
Mm-hmm.
illustrates what I'm talking about. And then finally, credibility.
Yeah.
Credibility. This
Like
is
almost trust type thing. Mm-hmm.
absolutely trust is probably the biggest key there. And so those three elements, logic, emotion, credibility, are critical to persuasion. And but they're critical in so many different areas. And so that foundation, yes, there's not just a technical foundation, but there is also for the learners that themselves that I deal with, the marketers that I work with, the content creators, there is a skill foundation. And that skill
Mm.
foundation is, how do people think? How do we reach them? And how do we use this logic, emotion, credibility foundation? What are the skills that you need to have to persuade people in logic, emotion, credibility? So we're getting down to the basic skills of writing, of scripting,
Yeah.
of how to tell a story,
Right.
but in using these elements. And then what do you want people to do? And so I see a lot of people that, they've got a good 50 to 60%, but what's that final thing? What are you asking someone to do? What's that next phase? Are you inviting them to do that? And so it all comes down to persuasion, communication, developing media that people want to see.
I love the way that you just mentioned, because I've seen this and other, in other, I guess, interviews that we've had. People talk about the marketing space. It's almost like, we're going to tell a good story. We're going to get people to, understand, to see, to place themselves in the story, all the things we're trying to get them to do. But until you give them that call to action, give them that action step, what are you going to do with it? What's the application of this persuasion? And it's interesting you mentioned that, just the whole idea about getting them to act, or to move based on this. It's not just, oh, well, I think differently now, but are you going to think differently and do something differently,
Right.
as a result of that? So unpack that a little bit about where does that, is that no longer marketing? Has that now shifted into the sales sphere?
Well, any type of persuasion, what whether I want you to think differently, if I want you to even take a physical action like clicking something, um, so that is what a lot of them would call the conversion point. If I can get you to click,
Yeah.
but ultimately, what I need to do is I need to be thinking in terms of progression. That if I can get you to think differently, then what will be the result of that? What might you do? What might you consider? What can I give you at that moment where you're thinking differently? What can I give you at that moment to move the relationship along, to add that level of progression? Same thing if I can get you to click. Well, now you've given sort of a small yes. What's a bigger yes that I can give you? Is it a download? Is it access? What is it that I can give you? I'll give you a great example. So today I wanted to make a bubble chart, and I'm looking for online. I did the search engine thing, make a bubble chart. And I think like 15, the top 15 results, every single one of them make a free bubble chart, all that. And every single one of them, before I even did anything, want me to register.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I'm sorry. I am not going to give you my email address, which has become all of a sudden the most valuable thing I've got, just to access something that I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know
Yep.
if you're going to. And the one I did give my email address, it didn't do what I wanted it to do.
Mm.
And so now, we've got so many people throwing this conversion point earlier and earlier and earlier. You haven't established enough credibility. At least let me see what you can do, what if you can perform to what I'm expecting. And so to me, there was no thought to progression. It was all about getting that conversion point early. And now we'll let you in and give you the free version. We're still going to try and upsell you to everything.
Mm.
But the progression was, were we the right company for you?
Yeah.
Was this the right application for what you needed to do? I didn't see anything like that.
And it is detrimental
Yeah.
because in the long run, not only would you just be kind of a neutral non-buyer, you're actually an antagonistic non-buyer now, because now you've made me mad. You've kind of frustrated me, and
You've got to describe my general approach to search and looking for vendors.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's right. I'm starting at a neutral or a slightly negative, and you have to move me from that point. But I had heard you talk about in another interview you were talking generally about analytics, and the one thing that really stuck out to me that stuck out to me in that chat was how you were really laser focused on the specifics around like metrics and analytics, and like which ones are really important. I mean, because there's so many to choose from, and the overarching like tone of the conversation was almost like this: is it quantitative versus qualitative? The more data the better, versus, man, really honing in on just a few metrics that are really going to be game changers. And I would love for you to kind of unpack that a little bit about how you help people think about those things, and I think would be really, I can think, helpful to agency owners in that space.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so here's an illustration, Kevin. And you've traveled, and I think this might resonate here. One of the things when I travel, I love to do is I love to go see libraries, especially if I'm in Europe. I want to go see the older, the better, the more books, the mustier that there. I realized that I've got to find the word. There is a word for the smell of old books, and I don't know what it is, but I love just going into this library and just looking at the architecture, the books, and just wandering. I can do that for hours. I love books, and that is to me, it is just an amazing place to be and take pictures. That's a lot like many people's approach to analytics.
That's a great
Is
example.
I need analytics, and let's see what this has, and let's wander around, and look at the architecture, and look at all the books, and wow, these are now. If I need to know something, then I'm going to walk through the doors of that library in a very different mindset and with a very different purpose. I need to know something, and that knowledge is contained in maybe one or two or three of these books, and I need to find where it is. So now, what are the tools that I need in order to find that piece of information? Well, first of all, where it starts, and let's start before we even get into the library. What's your question? What do you need to know? And that's what started me in analytics. Is I'm running these real estate websites. I've got limited time, limited resources. As I said, it was a hobby. I'm sitting in 9:00 at night. I've got about 2 hours before my wife's going to get on me for, just come on, get out of the basement. And I'm like, okay, so now what is the best use of my time? And so I started thinking through this. Well, what's my goal? What do you mean best use of my time? Well, what's going to make the most money? Oh, well, what's going to be not just make the most money, what's the most profitable? And I'm thinking through these questions here, and that's really where it starts is what is the most important to me? What's the most important to your business? And what I realized then is I asked the right question. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I stumbled through that because as soon as I brought up the word profitability, that set the framework now for the data I needed and how I would be evaluating the data I encountered to that point. And so what I found as I'm going through the data, I'm seeing, oh, wow, 90% of my leads are coming from search. Wow, amazing. And, as I'm looking through there, but then I had a kind of a rudimentary spreadsheet for sales tracking. Oh, only 2 of those turned into sales. Okay. Well, where did the rest of my sales? Well, the rest of my sales came from articles that I'd been writing. It came from PR. It came from, and I'm looking at all these other things that only 20% of my leads came from those categories, but they accounted for over 90% of my sales.
Mhm.
So
Like the
if
Pareto principle at work there.
right now, if I'd asked the wrong question, where am I getting the most leads from? I would have been chasing I would have been chasing the 90% that produced the 2%.
Yeah,
If I asked that question.
that's a great example.
By focusing on profitability, it enabled me to ask the right question, to evaluate the data properly, to continue to ask questions that guided me to that answer. And once I hit that answer, okay, now I know where I need to focus my time, how I need to focus the leads that come in, because now I know which leads are more valuable than the others, which ones have a greater chance of closing, and not just closing, but with greater profitability. So
Right.
it all comes down to, number one, have you properly defined the question for your business?
And it's as you talking earlier about, site logic, websites that are logical, that have a good foundation. It struck me as you were answering that question that we always look at kind of the front end of a website, the content, is it persuading people? Is it telling a good story? Is it, when you scan it, I mean, where do your eyes go when you look at a site? Is it what's above the fold, what's below the fold? But it's as important is the questions on the back end that are where you're looking at the analytics of it and saying, if you do not ask the right questions, you may have good metrics, but you have really bad output,
Yeah,
on the
absolutely.
backside. And it is so important. And it is one question that I was thinking about before we jumped on was just the whole idea of like Web 3.0, how, and I knew you were, kind of focused in the website space, but what do websites look like in Web 3.0? You hear all these
Wow.
people talking about, oh, we just have a landing page. I have a one-page website. I'm just trying to get people to do something and get their email address, and I'm building that. And then, websites are becoming less and less important or whatever. I'm curious to get your take on that.
That is a great question, because watching the evolution of websites over the past 25 years has been absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
To now seeing them as stripped down headlines and pictures.
Yeah.
With I think the website has become less of the sales mechanism that it was in some industries. You certainly can't, and then that's what we're seeing, I think, is a nichification. I can say that. Certain industries, they're heavily mobile dominated, especially for a consumer audience. And so, yeah, they need to be fast. They need to communicate. And yeah, what happens is you're relying much more on that emotional presentation of the imagery, the
And it's got
headlines,
to be
the
quick.
words.
I
Yeah,
mean, it is
it's got to be
immediate.
fast.
You're in
Yep.
or you're out. Yeah.
Yeah. But then, if you're trying to do something business to business, if you're trying to do something where the sales cycle is a little bit longer, well, now it's all about the presentation of that content. It's all about how easy is it to access, and can I find what I'm looking for? I'll go back to my, illustration that earlier today, looking for a company that I could create a bubble chart. I should have just spent the time drawing circles in PowerPoint. Because that's how I felt at the end. I felt completely like that was a waste of time. I can't tell you what any of those websites looked like. And mainly because when I got there, I got a pop-up within 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So, Web 3.0, if that's Web 3.0, we're in for a crash. We're due for a crash, because you can only skinny down the content to a certain point. Ultimately, you still need to answer some serious questions. As we said, it comes logic, emotion, credibility. What are you doing to build the credibility? How am I going to find the information that I need? So, yeah, but hey, for some sites, I think it's real easy. You just scroll down. This is what I want. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Um,
It's $10.
but
Buy it or don't buy it.
yeah, exactly. I it's hard to say where it's going to go because there's going to be an overreaction. There always is.
Mhm.
We've gone from spinning GIFs to now stripped down black websites with pictures and headlines, and there's going to be a reaction. Where that goes will be very interesting to see.
When I think about like just websites that we experience on a daily basis, I'm curious to get your take on when the transition has to occur from the site to personalization. Like, is it generally based on the cost of the product or service? Is it based on the, how long does it take people to actually make a buying decision in this space? I mean, it's like, we even have sites that are selling cars now, online. You never talk to anybody. You just buy a car,
Right.
either that, yes or no. But I'm curious to your experience in this space. Like, if you're speaking to marketing agency owners, where is that point? Or is there a process that you go through? You determine, okay, no longer is the website sufficient in helping people make a buying decision. Now you have to step in, and so we have to have a human element, not a bot, but actually a human step in.
Yeah. Well, I've seen this in a number of industries, and it's done very well. It's almost going back to the old wizard, when you would set up software and it would ask you questions, and
Yeah.
based on how you answered, it would set up certain features and leave others out. And I think that's where we're going, where we need to go. That yes, I can have a website structure, I can have links, but people have very little patience for that. But if I can say which product is going to be best for you, and I give you a series of 5 to 6 questions, very clearly presented. Well, now I know if you're business or residential. I know if you're consumer or business. I know if you're looking, square footage. We can build all these things out, and all we're doing is a question with a button push. So now they're not navigating, but in this way now, what they're giving themselves is that personalized experience.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then seeing at the end, here, this is selected specifically for you and your needs because you said this, this, and this. I'm seeing more of that. And I think that's sites that have a lot of content or a lot of offerings, that's going to become much more important in how they deliver the content.
That is such a fascinating, I mean, almost a science, around the whole idea of just the psychology of buying, that you really do have to have a good understanding of, as if you're trying to, I guess, walk people through the buyer's journey on your site. But what if you were speaking to agency owners today, about, helping businesses think through, what does it look like? What does an effective business website look like? Are there some just standard, and here's 2 or 3 points that you really have to understand about, the psychology behind how people, view and use websites, to make decisions? How would you answer that question if you're speaking directly to agency owners?
Wow. Simple is best. Less is more. It's just, and there's the basics. And first of all,
Now, you're arguing against yourself here because you said it, you had the black and white website with the bubble pop up,
yeah.
from there. So.
Yeah, and so one of the things that is very, very important to realize is that nobody reads. That's the thing. Jacob Nielsen did a test, I think back in the early 2000s. And he said what people do online, you can't even call it reading because it's not even close to what reading is. He redid the test a few years back. It's like nothing's changed. In fact, people scan
or
more.
Even less. Yeah.
Yeah. They'll read 2 words of a headline. And so, one of the things I tell people is, and so when we talk about logic, emotion, credibility, Emotion, that's your design, that's your pretty pictures. That's if you can get someone to visualize something and have a reaction, that's emotion. Logic is the presentation of the words you're choosing, how you're validating your information, but credibility is built into how you're presenting the information.
Mm.
If I can't read it, and let's I'm gonna use a phrase, and it's immediately gonna conjure up an image. Tiny text. Terms and conditions. How are those typically presented? They're typically presented in a very, very small typeface, typically on a lower contrast. You'll see like a dark gray on white. You'll never see terms and conditions presented in an easily readable, bullet pointed, highly formatted document that makes it easy to scan. Why is that? Because when we see a block of small text that we're going to have to study, our brain is fighting it. Our brain is saying, no, don't make me do that. So the credibility of how we present content, clear, bold headlines, clear subheadings, and headline subheadings don't go beyond 7 words. No one will read it. Bullet points. If your bullet point has 2 sentences, that's not a bullet point. That's a paragraph.
That's it. Yeah.
Bullet point.
Right.
Yeah. Bullet point. The purpose of a bullet point is to concisely give you information. And if it's 5 to 7 words, okay. But that first word better be an action verb. And so learning how we can not take advantage, but if we can better understand how people evaluate, how they scan, how they quickly absorb content. Well, knowing that, I can use those elements to better optimize, for lack of a better term, the experience of when they scan that page. Because now I can lead their eye, knowing color, contrast, markup, and how all those things work together to get people to absorb information and scan to find the information they want. Then when they want to know more, then they're going to spend their time looking and finding.
Dive a little deeper.
They'll do that deep dive and spend more time. But really kind of understanding looking eye tracking studies, look at scanning studies, those types of things. Those are what's going to enable you to create sites that will create apps that will be absolutely usable and pleasing to use for your users.
This next question that I want to ask you, just one of my favorite questions, because I've just added it in the last few episodes, because I am, the guests that we have on this show are really truly subject matter experts in the field, and I love to hear their take on this question, and try to keep it fairly concise in your response. And maybe it's like, what's your first response when I ask you the question, but what do you see as the biggest problem in marketing today?
I think it's been taken over by social media fluff. It's this reliance on a post, this reliance on a tweet. I'm going to expand. Someone asked me the other day about, you've got a lot of LinkedIn followers. Did you notice that business started coming when you started increasing followers? And I'm like, no, my followers are increasing because I'm teaching here, because I'm writing there, I'm doing this. It's all these
effect,
the followers were not the leading indicator. They were not the catalyst. The catalyst was, I've been writing, my website is 15 years old. I've got books out. I've got articles out. I'm doing podcasts. I'm guesting on podcasts. I'm doing a lot of things, and that follower count just happens to be increasing. And so it's I'm seeing almost like this backward emphasis. And now, don't get me wrong, I think social media's got it. There's a lot of use for it. There is a lot for it. But 90% of what I see in social media is useless. We are oversaturated with useless content. That's the problem.
That I Could not agree more. I mean, it is that kind of this soundbite mentality,
Yeah.
that it is. And it's interesting, as you were talking earlier about, just keep it simple. Less is more. I love that Mark Twain quote that said, I was going to write you a short letter, but I didn't have time. So I wrote you a long letter instead. It is
Yes.
hard to be concise. It's hard to be succinct in how you communicate. And we do tend to kind of ramble, from time to time. Even as a podcast host, sometimes you do that yourself. But
Right.
so as we transition into our kind of our rapid fire round here, this
All right.
is one where put the seatbelt on, because we're gonna step up the speed of the vehicle here and
Here we
go
go.
into warp speed, Captain. But these are they're going to appear to be a little disparate, questions, but there's a method to the madness, and it really does. It really is. There's probably some science behind this too. But did you get along with your parents growing up?
Yes.
Did you have siblings?
Yes.
Did you have a pet growing up?
Yes.
Do you currently have children?
Yes.
I think I read that in your bio. It's
Yeah. Yeah. Currently, yeah.
Yeah. So what time? Yeah, that's right. You tell they act up. Yeah. What time do you wake up in the morning
6:30, 7,
and go to bed at what time?
10:30.
What is your ideal vacation spot? Money not being an object.
Oh, wonderful. The Caribbean. Love the Caribbean.
Does faith play any part in how you do business?
Yes.
What is one thing? This is going to sound like we've asked you this question before. What's one thing you would change about the current business climate today if you could? King for a day.
King for a day. Nice. Nice. I would love to designate a new search engine that the world uses.
You mean take over the current reigning one?
I would love to replace Google as the top search engine, not of the land. That would be the one thing I would shut down. I would shut down Google for the day.
I think there's a lot of followers that would jump. We're going to be followers on your social media if you can pull off shutting down Google. Man, this has been a lot of fun, Matt. I really appreciate you taking the time and just sharing your thoughts and your story and your journey with us. And as we wrap up today, what's one thing that I haven't touched on, that we haven't asked you about, that you would just love to kind of close us out with?
Oh, wow. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah. So you read it in the bio. I started an online coaching, and on that site, learn.sitelogic.com, I have classes that I have developed. So there are courses on analytics. There are courses on digital marketing. I'm going to be launching a business builder, so one of the courses is a certification course for marketers. And businesses don't want, really, I learned businesses don't want certification. They just want the bare bones. Give me what I need. Now, I will say that the reason why I built this is because in the digital marketing industry, I have worked for numerous education companies. I've developed content for numerous education companies, and everyone's doing it wrong. Nobody wants to sit and watch 20-minute videos for hours, or watch 105-minute videos. People don't learn by watching videos. They learn by doing. And so this is why, I was looking at one of my courses, that the certification course, I estimate it's probably going to take you about 45, 50 hours to complete. And I only have 4 hours of video. The most of the course is you doing the work. And then a human, me, my assistants who have been with me for years, they will be the ones to evaluate your work and then give you feedback. You see, and this is what going back to school, this is what education is all about. At no time when I did something wrong working for an employer did I get graded on my work, other than this needs to be redone. Make that better. And that's what we're trying to do. Is I'm not going to grade you based on a test. I'm going to give you feedback so that, the next time you develop this kind of report for an employer, for a client, guess what? You're going to remember. You're going to know, because you will have gotten feedback that tells you add this in. You might want to change this. Make sure you address these things.
Right.
This is what we need in digital marketing, because the current education in digital marketing is lacking. And so that's what I do at learn.sitelogic.com. Thanks for allowing me to to go into that.
Absolutely. And man, once again, I just thank you again for just joining us today and just sharing your expertise in this space. And this is just another episode of the Marketing Umbrella podcast, where we chat with marketing experts, where we provide insights and help agency owners scale and grow their marketing agencies. And please connect with our founder, Itamar Shafir, at umbrellaus.com to learn more. Matt, thank you again, and love to stay connected, and just really appreciate you just taking the time to share with us today.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we provide the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. To learn more, go to umbrellaus.com.